organs can be donated because I want to be an organ donor like my late son Mark was. Mark was graduated from El Dorado High School, third in his class in 2002. He was coming home from a jam session. He was in a little rock band with some friends in his class, and he was coming home from a jam session about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He was at the intersection of 82 and 167. He'd come off the 82 bypass, come down the ramp, looked both ways, crossed the southbound traffic, and was waiting to make a left-hand turn to go north to our house at Mermel Heights on the southeast corner of El Dorado when an 18-wheeler hauling cut lumber came along, drifted over 2.5 lanes from the right-hand lane, and hit him broadside in the left-hand lane. His 3/4 ton Suburban spun 5 times. It blew out 6 of the 9 windows. He was lifted from the vehicle, placed on his back. The clerk at the T-Rix at the intersection there was trained in emergency procedures. Every high school graduate in Louisiana has to take emergency medical procedures. She said, "He's not breathing. Turn him on his side." They turned Mark on his side. He took a big gulp of air and started to breathe again on his own. They brought him to our hospital. He had a broken collarbone, a broken jaw, a broken arm, upper part of his arm, and we were told everything could be fixed. But what we didn't know was that when he was hit from the left-hand side, it affected his carotid artery, where the artery branches into 3 arteries in the mid part of the brain, and that artery ruptured, reversing the flow of blood away from his midbrain down into his brainstem, and his consciousness was gone, and he was gone. He was declared dead at about 9:05 that evening, and we waived the customary EEGs. Normally they will do 2 EEGs 24 hours apart to determine whether or not there's any electrical brain activity. And unfortunately, EEGs are somewhat misleading. Sometimes you can get a false positive from an EEG, and it will tell you that there's electrical activity when there is not. What's far more appropriate and far more accurate are brain or blood flow studies. Blood flow studies can be done as effectively and as cost effectively as EEGs, but not many hospitals use the blood flow study. The blood flow study would determine whether blood was flowing in the right direction or the wrong direction. Anyway, we consented to having Mark to be an organ donor. He had been intubated when his heart stopped. He went into what's called VTAC, where his heart stopped, and it stopped once. They shot him back into rhythm, and that's when they intubated him. Fewer than 1% of the deaths that occur in our country occur under circumstances that allow the person to become a donor. So Mark was in that 1%. And it's remarkable that he was able to be a donor, but he fits into that category. I had a woman come up to me. I had dealt with this woman the first spring that I was the chaplain at El Dorado, in the spring of 1997, some 5 years earlier. And it turns out that her daughter, Kathleen, was in French class with Mark. And she said, "I need to tell you a story." I said, "What's that?" She said, "Well, they were talking about organ donation in French class a couple of weeks ago." I looked kind of puzzled, and I said, "Why?" And she said, "I don't know. Maybe they were learning the names of the organs." Well, the discussion ran hot and cold, and the students, there were only 6 of them in French 2 class, they asked Miss Hendricks, the teacher, if she could be an organ donor. She said, "I don't know if I could do that." And then at the close of the discussion, as it was winding down, Mark piped up and said, "Well, if anything happened to me, I'd want them to take anything and everything they could use, because where I'm going, I won't need it." And friends, I was washed over with a witness from the Holy Spirit of God that was as strong as any I have ever felt in my life. And we knew that we were doing exactly what Mark wanted us to do. And that has been a tremendous source of joy and affirmation and confirmation to me, to have that experience. So he became a donor, and he was hooked up to some 10 IV units during the night that monitored his blood pressure and his bodily fluids, and they kept checking his kidneys, and the nurse kept coming to me and she said, his kidneys are perfect, his kidneys are perfect, his kidneys are perfect. His liver was transplanted into a 46-year-old man in Florida who was married and worked in finance. His left kidney went to a 28-year-old woman here in Arkansas who sent us a note about 90 days after Mark's death that said that she was on dialysis for 10 years. So she went on dialysis when she was Mark's age at 18, and she was on the transplant list for 7. His right kidney was transplanted into a little girl named Caitlin Penzinski. Caitlin at the time lived at Calico Rock. She had gone on dialysis when she was 11 days of age, and she had never eaten by mouth until after she got Mark's kidney. She had to weigh 35 pounds and be at least 3 years old even to qualify for the transplant list. And she met those standards in October of 2001 before she got Mark's kidney in May of 2002. She got Mark's kidney 15 days after her 4th birthday. And we were privileged to meet Caitlin and her dad and her mom Tina, her dad Fred and her mom Tina in Little Rock at the headquarters of the Arkansas Regional Organ Recovery Agency 57 days after Mark's death. It was probably the most rapid donor-recipient meeting that I know anything about. Sometimes it takes years. Many times donors and recipients never meet. They are encouraging those meetings to take place far more rapidly than they used to. And I'll tell you this, that there's a celebrity donor family of sorts over at Pine Bluff. She's an employee of the Jefferson Regional Medical Center, and her 17-year-old died on the basketball court, and his liver was transplanted into Pat Summerall. Most of you know who Pat Summerall is. Former CBS sportscaster who broadcast many, many great sporting events. And at 75, Pat got the liver of a 17-year-old. Well, anyway, Caitlin got Mark's liver, and she responded beautifully. We were told that the liver was such a good match, it was as though it had come from a twin. And following our meeting, she developed a relationship with a lady over in El Dorado who authors and illustrates books. And Ramona Wood wrote a book titled Now Caitlin Can, which is a it's about a 24-page or 36-page full-color hardcover illustrated book that is targeted to children ages 6 to 12 to help them understand the donation